Welcome to Compassionate Heart Parenting. I'm Michelle. If you've ever snapped at your kids and then felt the wave of guilt afterward, or wondered why you reacted that way, you're not alone. After 15 years as an emotionally focused therapist, I have learned that parenting brings up emotions we didn't even know we were carrying. Here, we'll explore what's beneath those reactions and the small shifts that can help you respond with more calm and connection. Welcome to Compassionate Heart Parenting. I'm your host, Michelle. If you've ever been through a season in your family that feels really hard, such as periods of major life transition, and you've wondered about the impact on your relationships with your child or children, this episode is for you. Today, we're talking about something most parenting podcasts don't touch. What happens to the parent-child relationship when a family goes through a major event, such as a divorce, and how connection through tough times is not only possible, but can lead to something deeper than you had before. Michelle Cantrell is a therapist, speaker, and writer focused on the question of what happens when the roles that once defined us stop fitting the people who we are becoming. As the founder of the Center for Growth and Connection in Pasadena, California, Michelle has spent more than a decade helping individuals and couples navigate the complex emotional terrain of relationships, identity, and major life transitions. Her work is grounded in attachment science and explores how secure connection shapes our well-being at home, at work, and within ourselves. But Michelle's work is also informed by her own life experiences. In recent years, Michelle went through a gray divorce. And after nearly 3 decades of marriage while raising 2 daughters who were already young adults, in the middle of navigating her own heartbreak and identity shift, she had to figure out how to stay emotionally present as a parent while her family was going through this enormous change. Today, she describes her relationship with her daughters as deeply connected and brings both personal experience and clinical insight to the question many parents quietly wonder about: how do families stay connected through major life transitions? So, if you're carrying guilt about how you've been as a parent or wondering about your connection with your children, stay with us. This conversation is going to give you real hope. Welcome, Michelle. I'm so glad that you are here. And we're going to dive right in because I know people really want to hear from you. So, you went through a great divorce after nearly 3 decades of marriage while your daughters were already young adults. What was it like navigating this transition, both as a parent and as a therapist?
Well, in short, it was hard as hell, Michelle. And I'm so glad to be here talking about this because gray divorce is something we're hearing more in the media. This term's getting used a little bit more. People are becoming more familiar with this phenomenon that seems to be happening in growing numbers. And so before we dive in, I'd like to just talk a little bit about how I experienced gray divorce in terms of what I would describe as the
Mhm.
phenomenon. So, as it might imply, it's referring to divorce in midlife. So that's the
Okay.
short of it. But for me, it also describes an experience of going through divorce in midlife after you've been partnered for decades. And there is a monumental identity shift when you've been partnered and you see yourself maybe as a wife or a husband, a partner, and all of a sudden that role has been completely taken away from you. And so
Right.
it's this moment of major life identity shift that often coincides with other big things happening in midlife. And so, particularly for women, it can coincide with menopause and perimenopause, which is another monumental identity shift with all of the hormonal changes that we go through and the physical changes
Right.
we go through. And at the
Mhm.
same time, we might be experiencing the empty nest and maybe even caring for elderly parents. So
Mhm.
it's this convergence of forces, all of which inform our identity, and it becomes this this opportunity, and I'm going to use that word, this opportunity to really figure out what my new identity is. And so I think it's important to really understand as we're talking about gray divorce, this isn't just divorce, it's divorce at this stage in life that comes with so many other changes for many of us.
Right. And the parenting one, I'm thinking about this is when your kids are launching. You might
Yeah.
be a newly empty nester.
Yes. Yeah. And so then what does parenting look like at a time when there is this incredible shift? In my case, not obviously not just for me, but for my adult children, I think there can be pros and cons around the different age groups in which people get separated or divorced because if they were younger, there might be more complicated around parenting conversations, but we likely would have landed on 50-50 custody, for example, and my kids would have had built-in time with me and built-in time with their dad. And as adults, of course, they have autonomy, but there are all kinds of complications around how each of us are navigating our relationship with our children. And I certainly won't speak for my ex-husband, but I really had to figure out what it was going to look like to parent through a really difficult emotional time for myself with these people that I'm in relationship with, which my brain tells me these are adults. And so I have to really track what I'm able to and willing to share with them
Yeah.
and try and find that appropriate boundary because they're wonderful empathetic children. They want to be there for their mom. Of course they saw me in distress, and I really had to find that line of what felt like, let me be transparent, this is hard, I'm not going to try and hide that, with what are the appropriate boundaries I need to have in place in terms of what I do share with them.
I hear you. So you're saying, yeah, it's because they naturally, even my 12-year-old daughter does this, which I love. She's like, Mommy, are you okay? Are you having a hard day? So they would naturally ask you and notice that if you weren't okay, but then you were thinking to yourself, okay, I need to have boundaries here. I don't want to dump everything on them because that's
Right.
too much for them and too heavy for them, even though they're young adults. And that makes a lot of sense. So somehow you had to kind of, and how did you find that boundary of what to share with them and what
Mhm.
not to share with them? Especially, I mean, yeah, because I hear you. It would be different if they were 12, it would be different if they're 16, it's different in their early 20s. How did you
Yeah.
find that boundary of what to share and what not to share?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to be really clear, Michelle. I am a therapist and I know all the shoulds and should nots. And it still was really hard. So I want to
Mhm.
just be really clear about that. There were times when I would let things slip that I immediately thought I shouldn't have said that. And those created moments, opportunities again for repair. I also want to really reinforce that I did not go through this alone.
Mhm.
And I had safe containers with my therapist and other supportive friends where I was able to share in all the ways I needed to share, and I could be angry and I could be sad and I could cry and I could sort of vent in the ways that I needed to vent so that I wasn't doing that with my children.
Mhm.
But like I said, there were moments where I admit I overshared, Michelle.
Mhm.
And sometimes I caught myself and I would apologize. Sometimes my kids, because we do have a close relationship, they would call me out on it and they would say,
Mhm.
I don't really want to hear that from you. And I would take that as an opportunity to say, you're right. That wasn't appropriate for me to say that.
Mhm.
And I apologize and I will do better. So,
Wow.
this is what we know about secure attachment. It's not about getting it right all the time. It's
Yeah.
about equally about these moments where we have these ruptures, we get it wrong, we take responsibility and own our accountability in those moments and have an appropriate repair and not just say, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry and I'm going to do better. And then I'm
Right.
going to do the things that I need to do, like write in my journal or talk to my therapist about it to make sure that I'm following up on my commitment to have the appropriate boundaries with my kids.
I love what you're saying here because number one, you're saying to parents, hey, we as therapists, we struggle too. We are far from perfect. And I love what you said. We don't have to be perfect. It's impossible. So
Hmm.
it's okay. And it kind of sounds like what you're saying helped you maintain boundaries that you kind of already, as a therapist, had an idea of like what to share, what not to share, was having other support systems. If you had,
Yes.
because you had these other safe containers that made it a little easier not to spill out stuff on your kids. Because you had places that were appropriate to spill it out. And like you said, you could be totally raw and honest about everything that you were feeling and all the emotions. And I love that you were receptive to your daughter's feedback about, hey, that's too much, or hey, I don't want to hear that. I'm just thinking for all of you listening, as adults, if your parents, if you went through a divorce, and you had a parent who overshared, what would it have been like to be able to say, "Hey mom, hey dad, that's too much. Don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that." I mean, I'm just thinking of people in my life who couldn't say that to their
Mm,
parents and
mm,
who had to just absorb, absorb,
mm,
absorb,
mm.
absorb.
Yeah.
And that's so true. It's not about being perfect. It's about having that dance where we can be receptive to our kids' feedback and then take it in, not do it again, apologize, clean up our side of the street. So I'm wondering how, if at all, did your relationships with your daughters change throughout this transition of I don't know if there was a period of time kind of before the divorce, during the divorce, after the divorce.
Well, I think it's not a measurable change or something that I can really, qualify, except to say that we were all going through something really hard together.
Hmm.
And so I think being able to navigate that together while, like you said, staying in my on my side of the street, I think just naturally brought us closer. So, when my children would share with me, it wasn't obviously it's not just mom going through this, right? Even though they're young adults and even though because of our circumstances, they already hadn't been living with their dad for some time, so it didn't feel like this big abrupt change for them in terms of their day-to-day lives.
Hmm.
They had their own moments of struggling with what was happening and the shift in the family dynamic. And we
Yeah.
were a very nuclear family, and we had a lot of traditions in place that of course were changing over time. And what it wasn't just me being transparent about my pain and vulnerable in boundaried ways, but how was I going to respond when they shared their moments of pain?
Mhm.
And that was an opportunity for me to remind myself I am their mom still.
Yeah.
And in those moments when they were sharing their pain with me, and this is where it gets tricky, Michelle, because we're human. And again, our brains are coding these people as adults. They share their pain with me. I had to be really careful in those moments not to join in their pain around what they were
Right.
struggling with.
Right. Yeah.
And
Like saying, me too. Oh,
yeah,
yeah. That's so terrible that such and such happened. Or,
exactly.
oh, yeah. Because it's so natural. It's like the door is open. Couldn't I just walk through that door? It would feel so good. Probably crappy afterwards. But
Yes, you named
so
it. You hit the nail
and
on the head.
instead of walking through that door and you're like, okay, I'm a parent, I'm still their parent,
Mhm.
I'm going through something painful, they're going through something painful. How did you respond instead of adding on or
Yeah, this is where our therapist language really comes in handy, Michelle. And I did what I know we all need when our moments of distress is I acknowledge their pain. And I
Mhm.
said, yeah, I get it. I know that's really hard for you. I'm so sorry that that's something you're having to deal with. I'm here to listen. And that was the I'm here to listen was as much for them as it was for me because it was a reminder of myself. That's my job here. I'm here to
Mhm.
listen. I'm not here to join in this unique moment of pain for them. I
Mhm.
think there are all kinds of ways where sharing in something painful with somebody is appropriate and we can join in that experience to lighten the load for them. But with a parent-child dynamic, that there's a hierarchy there. And I wanted to honor that this is not a moment for us to join in our pain. This pain that they're experiencing is unique to their experience. And it's very different from the kind of pain that I was experiencing. And so I think it was just important to send that signal of I'm here to listen, I'm here to acknowledge, I'm here to validate, and I'm not here to be like, yeah, that's terrible. That sucks that you're going through that. And I know,
Mhm.
like, I'm going through this too. And,
Mhm.
again, Michelle, there were moments where that was a little hard, but
Mhm.
I
Of
had
course.
to catch myself and, again, repair in the moments when I didn't get it right.
And Michelle, it sounds so simple, but I really want people to hear this because I think this is, I don't know, maybe my favorite parenting tool that I've learned as a therapist. And I feel like I'm lucky that I do it all the time. And it's still hard. It's harder with my own kids
Mm,
than it is with clients, right? Because
always.
I'm not tangled up in my clients' lives.
Yeah.
Um, but this idea of listening, right? And that significance, I just want to repeat that again. You're consciously making an effort not to join in their pain. You're
Hmm.
consciously making an effort to be their listening person,
Hmm.
their sounding
Hmm.
board. And you've resourced yourself with your own
Yes.
therapy and your own support system so that you actually can do that for them, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure
Right.
there were probably moments where you couldn't,
Mm,
as well as others. And then you're saying you heard their pain, you acknowledged it, you validated it, you didn't try to fix it,
mm-mm. Nope.
didn't try to solve it.
Mm-mm.
You didn't join in. And that is really, really hard to see someone we love suffering,
Yeah.
to see someone we love or people we love in pain, suffering. Maybe their hearts are broken in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's so natural that we want to jump in, we want to fix things, that we want to take it away. How
Yeah.
did you, as a parent, when you struggled with the pain that they were feeling, stay in that listening role and
Mm.
stay out of fixing it, stay out of problem solving?
I think really reminding myself of their agency.
Mm,
And I it was a combination of reminding myself of their agency, that some of the things that they were upset about, there is an element to that that requires potential problem solving. But as young adults, it's now their job to do that. And if they ask me for advice, I'm happy to give it to them. But at the end of the day, this is about them learning how to navigate their own experiences and their own relationships, especially with their dad. And they are learning in real time how to experience and have vulnerable and difficult conversations, and I'm here to support them in that process, but I'm not here to do that for them. So I think it's a combination of really connecting with their agency, and also, and I think this is hard for all of us, Michelle, like you said, when we see somebody that is in pain, somebody we care about that's in pain, it's going to activate our own pain system, right? Because we care, because we love, we are now going to feel pain, some pain for them in that empathetic response. And
mhm.
sometimes that jump to problem solve is then becomes more about managing our own pain in seeing
Right.
somebody we love in distress, rather than, I mean, it's not in replacing their pain, but we're now motivated by I'm feeling distress seeing you in pain. And then the inadvertent signal we often send is, I can't tolerate your pain.
Right,
And
right.
so I remind myself all that time, both as a therapist, as a friend, as a sister, daughter, mother, that I can handle somebody else's pain, and my job is not to take it away. My job is not to say there's something wrong with you because you're feeling this. My job is to just be with you in this space as an emotional support and somebody to help you carry the emotional load of this experience you're having. And so that's something that is very helpful in my training, that I have had that training, and that's very much how I approach my professional work. I'm not a therapist that jumps in and offers solutions. I'm a
Mhm.
therapist that assumes that everybody has the wisdom within them to solve their own problems, and my job is just to help them have greater access to that. And that goes for my kids too.
Right. And I think that part is really important for parents, that even if your kids are younger,
Hmm.
5, 12, like you said, there's a time and place for problem solving.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
With them being older, it's kind of them asking for it. But even with younger ones, making space for that sounds really hard. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry you're going through that. That is so painful. That is so frustrating. And this can be as small as they had a fight with their friend, or they had a fight with their sibling, or whatever it is, right? It can be to huge life transitions, like going through a divorce, and maybe they're mad about, who's living where and what that looks like. And we might feel that urge to explain, well, this is why it's that way, and this is that, and this is the other, which there again can be a time and place, but we want to make sure we leave enough space for, I hear you. It's so
Mm,
hard to go through this change. You must be so angry. I can see how sad you are.
mm,
And that little window is, like you said, it gives them permission to be sad, lets them know we're going to be with them while they're being sad. And I think you're pointing out really well, Michelle, that it's really freaking hard, right? But it sounds great. It sounds lovely. But there have been times when I had to self-soothe as a parent, listening to my kids' pain. And
For sure.
it wasn't even like through a major life transition. It was like smaller stuff. And I'm self-soothing, kind of like rubbing my arm or rubbing my leg, kind
Mm,
of like soothing myself, like I can be with them through this. I can
mhm.
handle this. And just reminding like you said, our kids are strong enough to move through
Yeah.
the pain. And there's such value in letting them feel those feelings and being there with them as an emotional support
Mhm.
before problem solving, before
Mm.
explaining, before, if ever, we need to fix, because a lot of times it's not things that we can fix as parents,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Hmm.
Um, so I love what you're saying, Michelle. And it sounds like you're really close to your daughters. It sounds like you guys
Yeah.
have a really great connection. And I was
Hmm.
just wondering, has that always been the case? They're young adults now. Have you always felt really close and connected to your daughters as they were growing up?
I have felt close and connected to them mostly. There's some caveats to that though. Even when I have felt close to my children, there have been some significantly challenging times, especially when they were younger. And one of the reasons you and I connected so well early on in our relationship, Michelle, is because I think I've often joked, I wish I had found you when my kids were really little because I am very well resourced at this point in my life. I've had good therapy, I've had good friends, and I've done a lot of work. But there was a time in my life when my ability to regulate my emotions in difficult moments was very, very limited. And I remember this one time we were doing family therapy and my younger daughter was maybe 6 or 7 and the family therapist asked us to go pick out a little figurine that represented each member of the family. And my youngest daughter w- picked out a two-headed dog to represent me.
Hmm.
And I didn't even need to hear her explanation to know why she picked it out. But it
Oh.
it it broke my heart because I knew what her experience of me was because it was my own experience of myself. And when she did explain what the two-headed dog represented to her, she talked about one head was cute, fluffy, and playful mom,
Mm,
and the other one was scary mom.
mm,
The mom that would growl, the mom that would get angry. And she didn't know often which one she was going to get. And that was really heartbreaking because I didn't want to have that impact on her.
yeah.
And as a commitment to being the best mom that I could, I really continued to work on myself. And one of the things that again really resonates with me with the work that you're doing, Michelle, is the self-compassion piece because
Mm,
that was missing for me. That ability to be kind to myself in my hardest moments was
right.
missing. And then it became a feedback loop. The
Mm,
more I was beating up on myself, the harder it was for me to respond in the ways that I needed and wanted to be able to respond with my kids. So, that was something I really had to work through. And I've had a lot of shame and guilt, not recently, but over the years, even as I healed that part of myself and the relationship that we had, there was sort of that wish of like, oh, if only I could have been the mom then that I feel like I am now.
Yeah.
But all of those moments led all of us to where we are now. And what I continue to sometimes marvel at is, even though in my assessment, in my less kind assessments, I really messed up as a mom when my kids were in their formative years. And I
Hmm.
look at them now, and they're amazing human beings, and they have a close relationship with each other and with myself and with their dad. And part of that is because we've all learned how to really express our emotional selves, ask for what we need, set the boundaries we have. And I think that all came through some of these really hard times that we've been through, because
Hmm.
both my ex-husband and I, one of the things we always did well was we parented well together. And
Hmm.
we were big on really taking responsibility for our impact on our kids, and wanting to make sure we were always doing our best to show up in the ways that they needed.
Yeah, I love that. And that story
Mm.
really gives me chills because I can
Mm.
so relate. And I'm sure that many other parents can relate too. And it is so hopeful to hear that whatever mistakes we make, I'll even do air quotes, mistakes, um, that that's repairable and
Mm.
we can still develop and or strengthen a deep connection with our kids. And it really, I'm wondering, as you were saying that, I was wondering, do you ever talk about, because now they're older, right? They're young adults.
Mm.
Do you guys ever talk about that time when they were younger? Do they ever, like, what do they say now as young adults about that?
Well, I bring it up more than they do. And I kind of have this, when you go to therapy, throw your mom under the bus, blame it all on your mom. It's totally okay. But what strikes me is that is not the bulk of their memories as kids. Like when I
Mm-hmm.
think about when they were young,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for me not to focus on how hard it was for me, not
Right.
because of them, but because of me.
Mm-hmm.
And this worry that because I had such a difficulty regulating my own emotions when they were younger, what is the lasting effect on that? That's not how they remember their childhood. And
Yeah.
it's not that they don't remember those moments. It's not that they disregard those moments, but those moments don't feel as pervasive to them as it did to
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I always want to continue to take responsibility, even now. That's why I say, just go to therapy and blame your mom. It's okay. But I think it's that willingness to be accountable that actually lessens the impact of those moments back then.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Michelle, that had things gone in a different direction where that continued and you
Mm.
were like, I'm fine. I don't know what your problem is, kiddo.
Right.
Like, I'm great. If you have a problem, it's you or something like that. I'm sure that would never have been you, but that's kind of the trajectory where there might be long standing and continual impacts.
Mhm.
And you're saying, yes, there were these ruptures. And we as a family, I mean, you were in family therapy, so I'm sure like that repair started at quite a young age. And it's interesting that you say they don't bring it up, right? And
Mm.
and it's funny that you're saying like they remember that, but that's not the focus of their memories. Like it's
Yeah.
just kind of a blip, and it does make sense that because you guys have done a lot of, I mean, I guess you've done a lot of personal work, right? And then that led you to be able to show up differently with them and have more of that warm, fuzzy side of the dog, I guess.
Mhm.
That that becomes their memories and heals any ruptures that there
Mm.
were and strengthens your all's relationship. And I think that is really, really powerful because as you were saying earlier, I think as parents, we can get so bogged down by guilt. And I think, being educated is a double-edged sword. I wouldn't
Mhm.
take back my education. I'm sure all of the people listening, like you've read books and you've learned so much. And sometimes we can take all of that and we can be like, oh my gosh, am I doing enough? And is it enough? And I have to show
Yeah.
up like this.
Right. Yep.
And that was the case for me, at least.
Hmm.
And that pressure isn't warranted and isn't helpful. And then the self-critical and the shame spiral that can follow is doubly not helpful and can, reinforce that negative cycle. So I love that you're saying that part of your path out was actually changing your relationship with yourself and finding self-compassion. That is
Hmm.
really beautiful. And I'm just looking at my questions here to see if there was any things that I didn't get to ask about. So I'm wondering if there was a parent listening who feels like they haven't handled, family transitions perfectly, whether it's divorce or conflict or just difficult years, a different period of time. What would you want them to know about the possibility of staying connected with their kids over time?
Well, first of all, like this is never going to be a linear process. And all relationships that go on for any amount of time are going to expand and contract over the years. That is, your married partner or your partner, parent, child, sibling, friendships. And so there may be a time if somebody is struggling where there is more distance with their kids. And that can be really painful. And I think what I would really want somebody to take away from those moments is in those moments where maybe your kids need more space to remember that it's your job to be there when they're ready to come back rather than trying to force something. And I would just really plead with anybody struggling with that to find really good supports in your life to process that and even say, frustration like, hey, I'm doing everything right and my kid still doesn't want to re-engage that and making space for that pain to emerge somewhere, but not forcing anybody in your life to be in relationship when they're not ready and being willing to not just be accountable in these moments where you might not get it right, but what is the repair that needs to happen and what are you going to do to continue to work on yourself so that you are making the changes so that you're not continuing to have these same ruptures over and over again. And when you can do all that, and it's a lot, Michelle, I know that this is a big ask for people, and I want to acknowledge I've been very privileged to have the resources in my life that I have, and I know not everybody has that. And, I want to send all my loving compassion to anybody that's struggling and doesn't have the resources that I've had access to. But we want to just make sure that we are maintaining that there, a parent-child relationship is not about an equal relationship, right? And so it's not asking our kids to show up in ways to meet our emotional needs, which might mean it's gonna be a painful process of disconnection and repair and reconnection. So I don't know if that, I feel like I might have just kind of gone on, but I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I mean, I love what you said at the beginning. It's not a linear process.
Yeah.
And I think I need that reminder a lot. I'm always,
Mhm.
it's just to remember we're all works in progress. Our
Yeah.
relationships are work in progress, that we're gonna, ebb and flow and move
Yeah.
away and come back together. And yes, we do have to be intentional about how are we showing up as a parent? How's our relationship? But it's also okay for it to not be perfect all the
Yeah.
time and to know doesn't mean we're doing anything terribly wrong.
Right.
If we just have an intention to keep showing up and keep working on ourselves and just
Mhm.
kind of if you think about it as like I try to think of it as like this is a lifelong process.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I will be growing and learning until the day I die, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be ever done.
Yeah.
Um, then I think it makes it a little bit more palatable that it's not going to be perfect all the time. So I'll ask you one final question. If you could give
Hmm.
one word or sentence of advice to younger Michelle when she was a young parent,
Mm-hmm.
um, what would you want to say to younger Michelle?
I I think I would just start by just sending so much love and compassion towards her because she thought that everybody else had this mothering thing figured out but her.
Hmm.
Everybody else got the memo but her.
Hmm.
And she was constantly comparing all of her shortcomings or what she perceived as her shortcomings to everybody else who was doing it all right.
Mm,
And that just compounded the shame. And so I would just, I don't know if it's something, a message I would send as much as a feeling. I would just send so much love and grace and hope and compassion towards her because I think the self-compassion piece is so big and was so missing. She was
mm,
so hard on herself,
mhm,
and that made life really hard. And so I just want her to know she's doing great, hang in there, and that things are going to get so much better.
I love that. I'm just picturing you going back to younger Michelle and like giving her a hug and holding her and telling her, "You're doing good. I'm here.
Yeah,
I love you." Yeah, I hear you. That's what she needed. Michelle,
yeah.
thank you so
Um,
much for being here. I'm so grateful that you are my friend and not just a colleague. I'm grateful that you're my colleague as well, but I'm grateful to have you as a friend and to get to grow and learn with you all the time. And I've so appreciated you having you on. And for all of you all listening, if you would like to leave Michelle or I a comment, maybe let us know what resonated with you today. We would love to hear from you. Michelle, where can people find you?
Well, I have a few different channels, so to speak, that people can find me. So my practice is the Center for Growth and Connection, and our website is the Center for Growth. It's is not drop is Center for Growth and Connection.com. So for potential clients or somebody interested in working with me or the clinicians that work under me and approach work in the very similar framework, they can, as long as you're in California, they can seek out our services in California. Beyond that, I also like to just share my messages on Instagram and TikTok, and those are under the handle Grow and Connect LA. And there's some underscores in there, but I think if you just search for it, you can find it. I can also be found on LinkedIn for those that want to follow me there. And that is, again, if you just search for my name, Michelle Cantrell, I'm easy to find.
Awesome. Well, I will put all of that in the show notes so people
Great.
can easily find
Yeah.
you. So thanks everyone for listening. The light in me sees the light in
Um,
you. Be well.